A book editor's encounter with a best-selling author brings back memories of her dark past. After leaving a stranger's bed from the previous night's encounter, Alice Harvey, an aspiring writer, heads to her job as a book editor. In the office, her boss, Jack Bauman, tasks her with managing the re-release of Milan Dynecker's book, Waking Eyes. Upon hearing this, Alice immediately hesitates. However, her superior defends the decision by stating that he chose her for the job because her father is the author's literary agent. Eventually, she agrees to take on the task after her superior promises to read the manuscript of Karen Malone, a new writer she had been recommending to him. Later, Alice returns to her workstation. Upon learning that she will oversee the book's re-release, her colleague expresses how the story deepened her love for reading, as she strongly identified with its main character. Despite this, the book editor feels uneasy, triggering a memory. As a teenager, Alice met Milan Dynecker at her father's party. After Ben introduced his daughter to the author, the teen excused herself to continue working on her short story in her room. Unexpectedly, Milan opened the door, catching the aspiring novelist off guard. He explained that he was simply exploring and inquired if he could enter, leading the teen to allow him. Noticing the room filled with books, the author inquired about the teen's experience growing up surrounded by them. In response, she admitted that it was somewhat lonely. Upon seeing her writing, Milan became interested in reading her story. However, he was asked to return to the party before he could do so. As an adult, Alice struggles to complete her novel. While meeting with her dad and stepmother that evening, memories flood back, particularly recalling a celebratory dinner she once shared with the author. During the meal, Alice's dad celebrated the success of one of Milan's books. Unexpectedly, the teen's mom, Anna, interjected, proposing a toast to herself. She claimed credit for discovering talented writers and nurturing them for years, only to have her husband allegedly steal them away. Soon, Anna and Ben exchanged harsh words, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere for the teenager and the author. After dinner with her dad and stepmother, Alice heads to the bar and meets a guy to spend the night with. The following day, Milan arrives at the office to talk to Jack, prompting Alice to hide upon seeing him. Despite her efforts, he still spots her and is amazed at her growth. He hugs her, but this gesture only makes the book editor uncomfortable. Later, Milan tries to invite her to lunch. Initially, she declines, but eventually, the woman accepts when the author insists. At the restaurant, Milan asks about her day, a similar memory from Alice's teenage years. In the past, Alice had lunch with Milan, who consistently expressed interest in reading her story. The moment he read her first line, he offered advice on enhancing her work, eliciting a smile from her face. When the author inquires about her current writing endeavors, the book editor confesses that she's not writing as much anymore. Milan discloses his deep involvement in teaching, expressing his enjoyment in the process. He praises her impact on his new career, highlighting that she was his first and best student. Upon hearing this, Alice feels uncomfortable. As she leaves, the author expresses how much he misses her. Later, the uneasy woman meets up with her web designer friend, Sadie, at the park. Upon learning about her friend's interaction with Milan, she scolds Alice for engaging in business with him, aware of the harm he caused her 15 years ago. Nevertheless, the book editor emphasizes that she's doing her job. She then requests Sadie to establish a web presence for the book, a task to which Sadie agrees. The woman then prepares to leave and hugs her friend's son, Tyler. That evening, Alice returns home, prompting her to reminisce about another moment with Milan from her teenage years. While working on her new story, she contacted Milan and invited him to her bedroom to seek advice about the ending of her narrative. As they went through the story, they sat on her bed, and the author made notes on paper. Milan advised her to incorporate more concrete details to strengthen the characters. After discussing the story, teenage Alice and Milan talked about their day. The student mentioned that school was dull, noting that kids her age seemed to be fooling around. Subsequently, they agreed to meet every Thursday for mentoring. In one of their sessions, the author noticed Alice writing in her journal and expressed a desire to read one page to get to know her better. On the bed, Milan playfully grabbed her and the notebook. As she leaned into his chest, the author kissed her head. The teen then responded by kissing him, and he reciprocated. However, the man immediately felt uncomfortable and stood up. In the present, Alice prints her story and attends her writing workshop. However, she changes her mind and opts not to submit it, feeling it's not good enough. Later that evening, Alice receives a birthday surprise from Sadie and her friends. Subsequently, she stays in the bathroom to read Waking Eyes when Emmett, Sadie's college friend, unexpectedly enters and joins her. Curious about why she's reading at her birthday party, the woman explains to the guy that it's for her job. Afterward, they head to the living room to clean while getting to know each other, further deepening their connection. The following day, Alice sees Emmett sleeping on the couch and prepares coffee for him. Before he leaves, they kiss, indicating they're officially dating. Later that day, she meets up with Sadie and reveals that she and Emmett are seeing each other. On her way to work the next morning, Alice encounters a bus with an advertisement for Milan's book, triggering another memory. In the past, Ben discovered a garment in the living room and asked his daughter about it. The teen then explained that that it belonged to Milan because he assisted her with her writing that afternoon. This revelation surprised her dad, but he praised her for choosing a great mentor. Alice visits Emmett, a political activist, at his workplace. There, she opens up about her envy for him doing something he loves. She also shares that she has always wanted to be a writer but has struggled with completing her stories due to self-doubt. Her boyfriend reassures her that everyone has their inner critic, but some ignore it. Following their conversation, they share a romantic moment. The following morning, Alice hands Jack the new jacket copy of Milan's book. When she asks him if he has read Karen's manuscript, the superior assures her that he will finish it during the week. Afterward, the book editor heads to her desk and reads the first rule of good writing, which is about being generous. The rule was taught to him by Milan, who once explained that she must learn how to share herself. In one of their sessions, he gave her a birthday present, a poem he had written for her. As she read it, the author stood behind her and started touching her inappropriately. This action unsettled the teen, causing her to walk away. After work, Alice meets Emmett and gives him the keys to her apartment. The following day, she sees Milan's face in the newspaper, making her uneasy. Later in her apartment, she reads the other contents of the paper while her boyfriend works nearby. Suddenly, she comments on how someone named Alfred managed to get a job at the White House at the age of 28. Annoyed, Emmett calls her out for being envious of others' lives. Hearing this, she responds that he should not write in front of her because she should be the only one writing in her apartment. However, the man points out that she's not even writing, leading to laughter. That afternoon, Alice spends time with her dad and stepmother in the park. When her dad asks about her writing, she shifts the topic and mentions a terrific book she had read from a new writer named Karen Malone. She adds that she wanted Jack to read and promote it, expressing her desire for him to also look at it. Trusting her daughter's taste, the literary agent insists that he'll speak to Jack to release the new writer's book, but his daughter advises him not to. That night, Alice attends her writing workshop, and her instructor asks her if she wants a refund for her tuition because it's already past the deadline, and she hasn't submitted anything. Disappointed in her, he suggests she sign up again once she feels genuinely ready. The following morning, Alice meets Karen Malone in the office. It turned out that even though she didn't want her dad to intervene, he called Jack to invite the author. This realization immediately infuriates Alice, prompting her to throw her stuff and leave her work. The stressed book editor immediately heads to Sadie's house and meets Keith, Tyler's babysitter. Instead of leaving, she joins him in watching the boy while her friend is doing yoga. As Tyler sleeps, Alice notices the babysitter checking out Waking Eyes. He reveals that he read the book in his modern literature class last year but admits to not finishing it. Alice tells him to keep the copy, and suddenly she looks at him flirtatiously, leading to a romantic moment between them. Later, Sadie arrives home, catching Keith putting his shirt on. When she sees him being followed by Alice, she becomes furious, demanding the babysitter to go home to talk to her best friend privately. The woman then calls out her best friend for initiating an inappropriate activity with the teen, knowing that she has a boyfriend. Afterward, she asks the book editor to leave. Arriving home, Alice promptly showers. Later, Emmett calls, but she avoids answering, clearly remorseful about her betrayal. The next night, the book editor remains at the office and confronts Jack, who claims he'll edit Karen's book. She asserts that it should be her task since she discovered the writer, but he notes that she lacks experience dealing with first-time authors. Before he leaves, the boss reminds Alice to be at Milan's taping the next day for the Waking Eyes re-release. In the author's interview the following day, the woman questions Milan about the popularity of his book. He attributes it to the relatability of his teenage protagonist, resonating with a broad audience. Following that, the interviewer questions how Milan, in his 40s, captured the essence of a teenage girl. He dismisses the idea that a real girl inspired his work, emphasizing that his writing is entirely fictional. Milan clarifies that his method was to stroll around to eavesdrop on conversations, seeking insights into the evolving dynamics of teenagers. As Alice watches the interview behind the camera, memories flood back once again. Once, Alice skipped her session with Milan to spend time with a guy her age. The following week, she apologized for her absence. This behavior disappointed the author, who reaffirmed that he mentored her because he believed in her talent. Subsequently, he requested to come closer, stating he was mentoring her because he loved her. In response, the teen confessed to having met someone else. Despite learning this, he implied that he wanted to make her happy. Following the taping, Alice returns to her apartment, where Keith surprises her by returning the book. The teen suddenly enters, leading her to request that he leave as she anticipates Emmett's arrival. As the babysitter looks forward to another enjoyable time, the woman clarifies that she recently turned 29 and confesses that she was confused during their previous interaction. Suddenly, Emmett arrives, coercing Alice to introduce Keith to him. The man quickly becomes suspicious, leading his girlfriend to confess that she hooked up with the babysitter. This revelation infuriates the guy, causing him to leave without giving her a chance to explain. That evening, Alice meets her dad, who is with another woman named Alana, a conductor. She is surprised and asks about her stepmom, home, but the man only justifies his unfaithfulness. Seeking reconciliation, the woman goes to Sadie's house, but only faces rejection. With no friends to turn to, Alice goes to a bar, where she finds a stranger to spend the night with. In a session with Milan, Alice opened up about her first romantic experience, leading him to ask probing questions. He then expressed a desire to be the first person to make her happy, crossing boundaries by inappropriately touching her. Recalling this traumatic experience, Alice weeps beside the man she spent the night with. She then leaves the guy's apartment and heads to work. Arriving at her apartment, she tries to work on her novel but struggles to concentrate. Later, she goes to Emmett's place to discuss her tendency to sabotage romantic relationships. She confesses that she enjoys being wanted but starts questioning what might be wrong with guys who like her, or if they can do better. Before closing the door, the guy asserts he wants her, but points out he's better off without her. Alice and Sadie meet at the playground the following day to fix their friendship successfully. With her best friend's support, Alice attempts to get back with her ex-boyfriend. During an event Emmett hosts, he is surprised to see Alice in the crowd. However, the guy asserts he is determined to move on from her. In a desperate attempt to win him back, Alice starts a blog listing 100 reasons Emmett should forgive her. That evening, during dinner with her dad, she recalls the celebratory dinner when Waking Eyes became a bestseller. The presence of Milan's girlfriend at the celebration stirred jealousy within her. One morning at work, Karen approaches Alice, acknowledging that she was the one who handed the agent her book. In response, the writer asks the book editor to read the first chapter of her new book. This task excites the woman, who looks forward to working with the contemporary novelist. Milan visits Alice's office the next day to invite her to lunch. Before she can respond, Jack interrupts them, handing them the new copies of Waking Eyes. Opening the book, she finds a page with a dedication specifically for her, triggering memories of the day she attended Milan's reading for Waking Eyes in a bookstore. As the teen heard him read a chapter, she felt uncomfortable and hid in the bookshelves. Her mom rushed to check on her, prompting her to confess what had happened between her and the author. On their way home, with Milan in the car, Anna informed Alice that she had shared what happened with Ben. Hearing the accusation, the author immediately interjected, asserting that what the teen said wasn't true and suggesting that she might have simply misinterpreted things. Alice's dad bought into the lie, attempting to convince his daughter that the author incorporated details from her life to make the character in his book more authentic. Hearing this, Alice felt disappointed and insisted on stopping the car so she could leave. After reading the dedication, Alice goes to Milan's house and notices the new manuscript on his table. In anger, she confronts him, questioning whose life he appropriated this time. Milan denies using anyone. Furious, Alice prompts him to admit how he took advantage of her when she was a teenager. The author, however, claims that nothing happened between them. When the woman asserts something has happened, he agrees, but emphasizes that she enjoyed it. This response brings Alice to tears. She accuses Milan of using and abandoning her. However, the author justifies his actions by claiming to have created a beautiful protagonist based on her. Hearing this, the woman expresses the burden of living in the shadow of that character for 15 years. Frustrated, she storms off, finally bidding farewell to Milan. After the confrontation, Alice channels her energy into completing her list for her ex-boyfriend, which she then publishes online. Emmett reads through it until the end, where he encounters a video of Alice expressing her love for him. At the re-release party of Waking Eyes, Alice asks Sadie to take over so she can sincerely apologize to Emmett. He accepts her apology, and they patch things up, leading to a romantic night. The following morning, lying in bed, the man curiously asks his girlfriend if she is the inspiration for the character in Milan's book. With confidence, Alice responds, "Not anymore," indicating her readiness to move on from the past and embark on a new chapter in her life.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.